All right, let's dive into this explainer. Today, we're going to completely flip the script on how we view technology and mental health. We're looking at a really fascinating collaborative study from anthropologists and psychologists over at the University of Cambridge and the University of Zurich. And, instead of just asking if screens are generally bad, these researchers took a massive step back. They decided to evaluate our digital habits not through the lens of modern panic, but through the deep, long-term lens of human evolution and biology. It's a total paradigm shift. So I want to start off with a question that probably hits pretty close to home for a lot of us. Is technology ruining our mental health? I mean, it's basically the central anxiety-inducing question of our era, right? Think about the last time you checked your weekly screen time report and just felt that sudden pit in your stomach. Or consider the endless debates at school board meetings and those panicked conversations parents have at the playground. We are constantly worried that our devices are just fundamentally breaking our minds. And you see headlines like this 2023 piece from the Financial Times stating it as a stark, undeniable fact. Smartphones and social media are destroying children's mental health. This catastrophic narrative is literally everywhere. It's shaping public policy, and it's shaping private guilt. But our job here isn't to just accept those headlines at face value. Our goal with this explainer is to investigate the cultural myths we've built around them and see what the actual data tells us about our digital lives. Which brings us to Section 1, the screen time panic. Because despite what those highly polarizing, fear-inducing headlines might suggest, the actual scientific evidence on screen time and mental health yields surprisingly mixed and, honestly, often inconclusive results. The taxonomy by Meyer and Reineck really helps explain why the results are so jumbled. See, researchers often fail because they use a simplistic, what we call a channel-centered approach. That's literally just measuring the total hours a person stares at a piece of glass. But the more accurate approach is communication-centered. We actually need to look at computer-mediated communication, or CMC. Because mindlessly doom-scrolling alone in a dark room, that is fundamentally different from a 4-hour synchronous video call with your best friend who lives across the country. The technology is simply the channel. The specific human interaction is what actually impacts our mental health. All right, moving right along to Section 2, the evolutionary mismatch. To really grasp what's going on with these tech interactions, we need to zoom completely out from the modern era and look deep into our human evolutionary history to define a concept called evolutionary mismatch. So this happens when a human trait that was incredibly helpful, something that increased reproductive success and survival for our ancestors, actually ends up causing us harm today because our environment has rapidly changed. Basically, the world shifted way faster than our biology could adapt. To understand how an evolutionary mismatch actually works in practice, let's look at a pretty relatable physical health analogy. In our ancestral environments, high-calorie foods like fat and sugar were incredibly scarce. Because of that, over millions of years, we evolved a very powerful, survival-driven craving for them. Having that craving was a fantastic biological trait back then. But today, we live in a modern environment of abundant, super cheap fast food. That exact same biological craving now leads to an epidemic of obesity and diabetes. The environment completely transformed, but our biology stayed exactly the same. And here is the kicker. This exact same biological mismatch applies to our social lives too. For over 95% of human history, our ancestral norm was defined by dense group living, constant daytime socializing, and mixed-age free play among children in hunter-gatherer bands. But today, our highly industrialized reality is drastically different. We live in isolated nuclear families, we frequently migrate hundreds of miles away from our extended support networks, and children's lives are dominated by highly monitored adult structured activities indoors. We are currently living in an environment that is profoundly socially mismatched to our own ancient biological need. That brings us to Section 3, how tech actually heals. And this is where we get to the incredible twist in the Cambridge-Zurich research. What if modern digital technology isn't the root cause of our isolation, but is actually acting as a band-aid for the extreme social isolation caused by industrialization? When we map this out, we start with our ancestral environments, moving into the severe physical evolutionary mismatches caused by modern industrialization, factories, single-family homes, and vast physical distances. But notice the path to mitigation here. Digital spaces and computer-mediated communication actually help relieve these severe mismatches. They provide an artificial, but totally necessary, bridge that allows us to instantly reconnect with our distant tribe. It fulfills an ancient biological requirement that our physical world just doesn't support anymore. And we saw incredibly concrete proof of this psychological survival tactic during the COVID-19 lockdowns, when the global population was suddenly thrown into the ultimate evolutionary mismatch of total mandated physical isolation. We instinctively used our screens to heal. We didn't just sit in silence. Group video calls in Italy soared by a staggering 1,000%. Tinder hit a record-breaking 3 billion swipes in a single day in March of 2020. That's 3 billion. People were desperate for their pack. Our screens became the primary lifelines keeping our ancient, hardwired need for human connection alive when physical proximity was completely stripped away. We also see this deeply embedded in modern youth culture. Think about the sensory experience of ancestral forager free play. Kids were outside, roaming together in mixed age groups, completely away from adult supervision, naturally learning complex social norms and conflict resolution. Today, many metropolitan youth have completely lost access to safe, open, unstructured physical spaces. So what do? They intuitively simulate that unmonitored free play and relatedness in multiplayer online gaming lobbies. They're literally building virtual forts because the physical woods are off limits. In this context, the screen isn't the problem at all. It's a creative solution to a modern world that paved over their play spaces. But we have to look at the other side. Section 4, new harms, new mismatches. Because there is a massive caveat here. While technology heals certain industrial wounds, its highly novel features inevitably create entirely new evolutionary bugs that our brains just aren't equipped for. Have you ever felt that very specific modern anxiety? Checking a friend's page and wondering, why did you post a huge public tribute for their birthday, but you just sent me a direct message with a smiley face? Or opening a virtual map and seeing the avatars of all your friends gathered at a restaurant without you. Our brains evolved to carefully monitor our social standing for survival in a small tribe, but the psychological strain of read receipts, geolocation, and public timestamps, that hijacks our wiring. It triggers a highly unnatural, exhausting state of digital hypervigilance. Another novel harm is the unprecedented scale and nature of modern toxicity. In an ancient, ancestral village, you simply couldn't verbally abuse someone anonymously. If you insulted a tribe member, you did it face to face, and you faced severe, immediate social sanctions, potentially even exile. But today, anonymous gaming voice chats and social media comment sections create a highly unnatural environment. They facilitate rapid, high-volume verbal abuse, often targeted at female and minority voices, with absolutely zero physical or social consequences for the abuser. This total lack of accountability is a brand new evolutionary mismatch caused directly by the architecture of the technology itself. So, where do we go from here? Section 5, designing better digital spaces. How do we actually use this evolutionary baseline to architect healthier digital environments for everyone? Well, the researchers offer some incredibly thoughtful design recommendations that aim to replicate the positive, stabilizing features of human ancestral environments right inside our apps. First up, remove like counts. Our ancestors certainly didn't have their social popularity precisely quantified by a public fluctuating number. Second, mimic ancestral community sizes. Our brains are actually tuned to something called Dunbar's number, meaning we can only maintain meaningful relationships with about 150 people. We aren't biologically built to perceive and process the opinions of a million strangers. And third, promote cross-age gaming clans to naturally bring back the healthy, mixed-age mentorship that defined ancient playgroups. This evolutionary framework also provides a clear blueprint for fixing our highly stressful dating apps. Having thousands of instant mating options sitting in your pocket is honestly an evolutionary nightmare. It completely overwhelms our ancient brains and leads to crippling choice overload. But newer apps like Breeze and Tea are actively utilizing these ancestral principles. By intentionally restricting overwhelming mate pools and limiting concurrent conversations, they force users to actually focus on one person at a time. They encourage greater transparency and a much slower pace of courtship, which aligns the technology much closer to how humans naturally pair bond. So I want to leave you with a provocative final thought as we wrap up this explainer. The next time you find yourself staring at your phone or feeling a wave of guilt about your daily screen time, ask yourself a completely different question. Are you truly addicted to your screen, or is your ancient primate brain just desperately searching for your tribe in an increasingly isolated, industrialized world? It's a perspective that completely changes how we approach our daily digital habits. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and keep questioning the world around you.